The Still Loading podcast is brought to you by the wonderful people on Patreon. Amazing people like Kevin from the Bit by Bit Foundation, Gilmer, Stephen P., Matt, aka Stormageddon, Eric H., and Mr. Biscuits have been wonderful enough to support the show over there. So if you would also like to get your name read at the beginning of an episode, along with a bunch of other goodies, go over to patreon.com/stillloadingpod and see everything it has to offer. On this episode of Still Loading,
where is she?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval, and today's episode, we are exploring the dark, seedy underbelly of Gotham City. We are looking in, well, specifically only the Asylum, but it's got a seedy underbelly, actually, with pods and poisonous plants. There's lots of underbellies in this Asylum. But joining me today to talk all things Batman and all things Arkham Asylum is my good friend Heather. Heather, how are you doing today?
Hey guys, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for coming on the show. First time guest.
Yes. I've only done one other podcast and I don't think it even aired, honestly. So
really?
Yeah, well, it was like a very early episode and I don't think it got off the ground. So
okay. I have a story to tell you about a podcast that didn't get off the ground that I don't want to repeat on air, but it's good. It's good.
So I'm stoked. And I'm talking Batman, so I'm like extra stoked.
You're wearing a Batman shirt, so you're all set.
This was the only one I could find that
I know
was
you
clean,
have many.
But I have, yeah. It was not the one I wanted to wear, but we're okay.
Well, you are the biggest Batman fan that I know, so I had to have you on for this. And yeah, we're going to talk all about Arkham Asylum. These are some of your favorite games, I know. So to kick it off, I want to ask you, first off, your history with our Lord and Savior, Batman, the Batman.
Bruce Wayne.
And also then in turn, like when you first played Arkham Asylum. But first, talk about Batman. How did you kind of first got into him?
You know, I don't remember when I got into him. It's just always been a constant. Like, I literally, like, as far back as my memories go, I liked Batman. Like, I have pictures of me at like 2 years old with like a ton of Batman shirts and stuff. And I do specifically remember other little girls having Barbies.
And you had
And
Batman.
I had the Michael Keaton Batman.
I love it.
Like the Barbie sized one.
Yeah.
And the Batmobile from Batman 89. And that was like my thing. And like my friends would invite me over and be like, we're gonna play Barbies. And I brought Batman and his car.
I brought Ken. Where's the trigger?
I would be playing and they'd be like, oh, Barbies are doing this. And I'm like, I have to wait till night to come out. And so like I stopped getting invited to those pretty quickly. But I had no interest in anything else. Like,
what are you girls, not Vengeance or the Night? Come on.
It was very much like Batman the Animated Series was like my jam. So I grew up with Kevin Conroy, who
rest in peace.
Yeah, seriously.
Legend. Absolute legend.
But who obviously did the games too, which made it so epic. And then from there, I remember I used to watch, my grandparents had like a huge library of VHSs, and then they had notebooks with like what number, because my grandfather would like record everything.
Oh, so this wasn't like bought VHSs. No. This was like recorded off of TV
he was
VHSs.
Like,
okay.
He would like subscribe to HBO or whatever, and then he would record videos, and then we would go over and we'd sit down with the binder.
I love it.
And I always grabbed B, and I always went straight to Batman. So I probably watched like Batman Returns.
Was it any of the original Adam West Batman that was on there as well?
I did watch some of that. It wasn't, I wouldn't say Adam West was like my Batman.
Yeah.
That was more like my mom's Batman. I mean, she was not like super into Batman, but she remembered that growing up. But I definitely got into like the animated series and Michael Keaton Batman.
Yeah.
And that was like it for me. That's all I wanted to do. Like, it's my whole life. And then my dad introduced me to Adam West. And that was more of like a silly thing. So like, I'd be like, this Batman's so lame. And he'd be like, no, it's funny. And then he got me into the movie, which to this day is still hysterical. Like,
I have never seen any of Adam West's Batman stuff.
What?
Period. Like, I want to, because I think at the time I was like, Batman's serious. Batman is just And don't get me wrong.
Well, that's the Batman we grew up with. He was like hardcore and serious. And
and that's what a lot. Like, I always like when Kevin Smith talks about it, because when he was getting into it, he did not know about what is the big Batman, oh my gosh, what's the big series? It's not Killing Joke. It's The Dark Knight, I guess. The Dark Knight story with...
Oh, like the Frank Miller Batman?
The Frank Miller. Thank you.
Yeah.
What's that book called again? I'm blanking on it.
Return of the Dark Knight?
Something like that.
I'm going to look that up because now I sound stupid.
But they... he was talking about how, like...
He's like a gritty one and like uses guns and...
Yep. And Kevin was talking about how when he first got into it, he was trying to talk to his friend Walt Flanagan about Batman, because he wrote an essay.
Yeah, The Dark Knight Returns.
That's what it was.
And he did year one too.
Okay.
Which was also like a gritty, but it was like a younger Batman, where like Batman, the Dark Knight Returns was like old Batman.
Yes, like 50s Batman. Well, so Kevin wrote an essay in high school all about Batman, but it was only based off his knowledge, which was the 60s TV show.
Okay.
And so when he showed it to his friend Walt, he's like, "That's not Batman," and he gave him The Dark Knight Returns, and it kind of went from there. So I actually kind of equate Batman a little bit to my relationship with James Bond, where like I grew up with Pierce Brosnan, which now he's super silly, but at the time, like that was so gritty.
It was so cool at the time.
It was so gritty.
Nobody was cooler than Pierce Brosnan.
No, and no one was better looking. Are you kidding me?
No.
That man is suave as hell. Still, I know you don't. So I know you haven't listened to any of my still bonding stuff, but we talk a lot about the kissing styles of James Bond. Pierce Brosnan couldn't kiss. Lots of biting.
No.
Lots of bites. Anyway,
some people like that.
I have a theory about how it happened too, but I'll save that for another time. So I
remember thinking too, like James Bond, like my mom was always like, my parents were like, no, not Pierce Brosnan, Sean Connery.
Yeah.
And I remember watching those and being like, what? And like now as an adult, I'm like, Sean Connery was cool.
Yeah.
But Pierce Brosnan was like our James Bond.
Well, and then Daniel Craig now is like super, super gritty.
Yeah.
And
still good, but like that Pierce Brosnan was like our childhood.
Well, and I bring it up because with Batman, Batman now is super gritty, super serious. And Batman's, in 66 or whatever, in the 60s, was meant to be funny. It wasn't meant to be
it was like
serious.
lighthearted.
It was a comedy. And I think that's something that goes over people's heads, especially with like older James Bond movies. If you watch the Roger Moores, there's some dark stuff in it, but it's meant to be.
I don't think movies got that dark though either.
Well, Roger Moore's one, so his was in the 70s, and that was when cinema was super gritty. Your Scorsese's and your like that The Godfather came out in that during the 70s.
True. I stand corrected.
But so that was always kind of ran a little bit counter to that, which was interesting. But so I kind of equate Batman to James Bond only in the sense that there's actually a lot
everyone
of
has
comparisons.
a favorite.
Yeah, everyone has a favorite, and also just like the tonal shifts of the different generations, like how Connery was different to Moore, to different to Dalton, to Brosnan, so on and so forth. And then it's the same thing with like your Batmans. So yeah. For my own history with Batman, it was pretty much, I remember my friend Eric growing up, and he went to the same church as we did, or as I did, and he loved the animated series, and I just wasn't into it. I also didn't really watch WB-17, and now as an adult, I kind of regret not really trying it.
It's such a great show.
It really is.
It really is.
Way better than like.
I'm showing my 18-month-old the animated series right now, and every once in a while, I'm like, should I be showing? You know what? I don't care.
You're gonna love Batman just like your mom.
And then I'm like, why does he hit?
So that was my first kind of exposure to it, and then I remember I actually saw the original, the Batman Begins, like years later. That was like, there wasn't really a lot of Batman in my life. I knew
also
who Batman was,
but it was more about.
Well, I mean, I saw the movie Batman Begins, I should say, and
great movie.
I didn't know, because I didn't know any of Batman's villains, so I didn't know that the Scarecrow was pretty much like, until Ra's al Ghul comes in, or Ra's al Ghul, however you say his name. I had no idea that the Scarecrow was in it. I didn't know any of that. And so I vividly remember, after seeing The Dark Knight in theaters, like coming back from it, I got super pissed off at my friends because I made some passing comment where I was like, oh, I didn't know who the Scarecrow was. And I'm like, oh, he's just some guy. He's just like some white dude. And they're like, some white dude? That's the Scarecrow. I'm like, well, no, I know, but I didn't know. I'm explaining to you, he was nobody to me.
It was like a shock to you.
And they wouldn't let it go that I didn't know who the Scarecrow was. I'm like, I don't know how many different ways to tell you. I don't know who the fuck the Scarecrow is. Stop yelling at me. I did not know who he was. So I loved The Dark Knight when I saw it in theaters. Had a really bad aftertaste because my friends were being dicks and were not, just because I didn't know who the fuck the Scarecrow was. I didn't know any of Batman's like cavalcade of enemies.
I think anything that's super popular, like, people get a little defensive because it's like a beloved character to them, but it's also like, how are you supposed to let new people in if you're going to yell at them about?
And it's like, I told them I didn't know it. So it'd be one thing if I said I'm a Batman expert and then I didn't know who the Scarecrow was. You know what I mean? Who's like a pretty, not like one of the main villains, but he's like, what would you say, B tier? Like, if there's A tier is like Joker, or if you're going with S tier is the high. I don't know. We're going to stick to normal letter grades. If A tier is your Joker, your Bane, your like, I don't even know if Bane would be considered it, but definitely Joker is your A tier for sure.
Bane was like a lackey in what was it, Batman Forever, maybe?
I don't know. I haven't seen I've seen the Batman 80,
the one with
89.
Poison Ivy. He was a Poison Ivy lackey in that movie. And I remember as a kid, like, he was terrifying. You go back and
Freeze
watch
is
now.
Also a good villain.
Yeah.
Well,
what killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age. Never not good.
Kevin Smith talks about how Mr. Freeze was not a good villain until the animated series.
Yeah,
and they humanized him a lot.
He had
with
like
his
such
story.
a heartbreaking story in the animated series, and like, I didn't know that until after I saw the movie. Like, then I was like, oh, I care about him now.
That's what good writing will do.
But
okay, so now moving over to Asylum specifically,
yeah.
When did you first play Arkham Asylum, and what were your some of your memories around it?
I played that the second it came out.
Really? Were you kind of tracking it?
I was not like, I'm a casual gamer, so I will get really into games, but they're like very specific.
Mm-hmm.
So I played WoW. I was pretty hardcore into that.
Mm-hmm.
Probably like 2007-ish. But that was pretty much, I wasn't really playing a lot of console games. I mean, I'm trying to think the console games.
Well, your husband's a big PC gamer, so that's not surprising.
Jamie, he's been on a few times now, right?
Yep. Final Fantasy VI, a number of episodes. But yeah.
He's a PC gamer. But he had consoles and he would play like PS2 and stuff like that. And he had an Xbox 360. I played like maybe racing games or something. I don't know. It wasn't something that like caught my interest. And then Jamie told me that they were releasing a Batman game. And I was like, well, we're getting that.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I mean, like, we can wait for it to go down in price. You know how he is. He's like, we don't need to play it when it first comes out.
I keep forgetting, like, he doesn't buy games.
He does not.
He will literally borrow from his brother's Steam account.
He does. I mean, he will buy some games, but it has to be like very...
And like, I get it. Like every game goes down in price, but then you have to wait for like a year. And if you don't feel like waiting...
But he takes his time with games. So like... I will hyper focus and like I need to play it. So like Arkham Asylum came out and that was my whole life.
Yeah.
Like I was calling out of work. I was like at one point I'm pretty sure I worked at Dairy Queen at the time. And I had this Dairy Queen hoodie. I still have it because it's just comfortable. And it's like, it's not a hoodie I leave the house in because it's like torn and stained.
That's your at-home work hoodie. I getcha.
It's like if I'm feeling sick or really down about something, the Dairy Queen hoodie goes on. I'm in pajamas. And like, I buckled down and I played that game. And this is so embarrassing. But like at one point, I like let my dog outside and a gust of wind came. And I was like, oh my God, I stink. Like, because I had literally just like, I had not moved from the couch in days. Like, wow. I was like, I'm just going to keep playing this. And then I realized I had a problem. And I showered and went back to the game.
There you go. So you fixed the problem.
I fixed the problem.
And went back to the thing that was good.
But like I would stay up till like all hours of the night playing it, and like I found every little corner of that game, and like I 100%
all the Riddler trophies and everything.
I did not do it this time around.
I don't blame you.
I was like,
I used
Riddler
a guide.
trophies. I did it.
That and like the payoff for it is like when you get the final Riddler trophy, you just hear he calls you. He's like, "How did you cheated? There's no way you could have found it." And then you hear the police like barging down his door and arresting him, which is cool, but it's kind of meant more for bragging rights than it is for like anything like
I think
story wise.
I think too, Riddler in my head is like
not one of your favorites.
He's kind of like the most lame. Like I know a lot of people love the Riddler, especially the Robert Pattinson Batman.
I never saw the Robert Pattinson Batman.
What?
No, I meant to, but
we're watching that together.
All right, sounds good.
We come over and we'll do it on the big screen, so you can get the full experience.
That sounds like a plan.
It's another dark take, but I really enjoyed it.
That's what a lot of people said.
It's year 2, I think. So he's been like Batman for like a year.
Mm-hmm. He already found the trigger.
We know his parents died, so we don't have to go back and revisit that. I'm sure there's a scene in there I don't remember. But it was good. It's kind of like political too, like not in the sense of like they're talking about
it's
our
not
politics.
Like real world politics, but it's political in the sense of like kind of like Game of Thrones is political.
Yeah, the storyline is politically motivated. And lots of girls really love the Riddler. I feel like loving the it's Jim Carrey Riddler is what I picture. I think so. I don't take him seriously.
It's a little over the top, and
like it's ridiculous, and you're like, even in the games, you're like everything's going on, and like the world is falling apart. And Batman's in there saying, and he's like, "Find my trophies." Like,
there was we were talking about Kevin Smith off mic about his Fat Man on Batman podcast.
Love that podcast.
He has he has a different podcast that I haven't been able to listen to in a while. I think it's behind a paywall now called Edumacation.
Okay.
And that's all about, it's meant to be more of like a fun fact. So his friend Andy, it's him and his friend Andy, and Andy brings a lot of these, science articles to talk about interesting things, and Kevin just derails it. So in one of the one of the deviations, one of the tangents they went on, they talk about how Riddler is one of the lamest villains.
He really is, though.
So Andy makes a joke where it's like, if Kevin asks Andy a question, like, if you could have one Batman villain to terrorize your city, which one would it terrorize your city? Which would it be? And I think Kevin chose Catwoman just because she's like kind of in between, and she just steals stuff from rich people anyway. And then Andy goes, the Riddler. He's like, yeah, I could see it. And then Kevin starts basically going into a little fantasy thing where he's like, it's the guy, it's the Riddler. Oh God, he shot Jerry. He's got a question mark gun. and so who the fuck picked the Riddler for our city? Oh, it's that guy, Andy McKelvers. Thanks a lot, Andy. Jerry's dead.
Jerry's dead.
And he went on this
I have to answer what's black, red, and white all over.
And he went on this whole tangent about how everyone in this city hates Andy McKelvers because he chose the Riddler. Who knew the Riddler had a question mark gun?
You know who's a lame villain? Calendar Man. Kite Man.
See, there's so many that I don't know any of these villains. Like, I'm not a Batman aficionado.
Although I will say, Harley Quinn, the series on HBO, it's Max now, but the Harley Quinn series on there redeemed Kite Man for me. He's like one of my favorite characters. He's so funny.
I'll have to watch the Harley Quinn series.
So it's pretty funny. It's definitely not a kid-friendly show.
I believe it. I mean, Harley Quinn's been, in this game, she's pretty sexualized. She even calls it out in the beginning. She's like, look at my new outfit, B-Man.
B-Man.
So for my own history with the game, it isn't nearly as interesting. I just kind of like, I heard this game's good. I tried it and played it a couple years ago, like probably a decade ago now. Okay. Really liked it. And then I decided I was looking for a game to play on stream earlier this year. and started replaying it and just really enjoyed it again. And it was fun. And that's when I was like...
It's got great playability, like replayability.
Oh, and that's when I reached out to you to be like, hey, do you want to come on and talk Batman? I know you're a big Batman fan. Yeah. And you've been asking for literally years, like, hey, whenever you do Batman... I think
the second you told me you were starting a gaming podcast, I was like, are you going to talk about Batman? Can I be on?
At some...
one breath.
I'm happy it took this long because it took me a long time to find the voice of the show. So now you are actually experiencing a podcast with someone who actually knows what the hell they're doing to an extent. You know, I'd like to think I know what I'm doing. But
I'm on a podcast with someone who thinks they know what they're doing.
Yeah, very. Right. Just I think I do.
Perfect.
But let's dive into the game now. We've got our histories out. We're going to talk about the overall gameplay and structure of this. So the first thing to kind of note about this game, I think it's kind of understated fact that not a lot of people think about. It's a Metroidvania. You explore the worlds, you get new different abilities, and you have to then, once you get those abilities, you have to backtrack to find different secrets. So and also in other places that you've already been, you have to go back for story reasons, and you can access new places or get to new things now that you have new abilities. And the basic premise that encapsulated all this, the reason why Batman's getting new abilities and exploring the Arkham Asylum, is that he has captured Joker, and he's like surprised at how easy it is to capture Joker. He's like, you got to be up to something, and that should have been his tip off. You know, that he should have known.
Batman knows everything.
Exactly. He's smart enough to know, and the Joker does break out, and he has set this whole plan in motion where basically he has taken control of the asylum. You don't know why yet. And you are behind the 8 ball. He has locked Batman out because he has, Joker planned this whole thing out pretty meticulously. And you have to go through the asylum, explore it, figure out what Joker's up to, and try to stop him. And that's the overall premise of the game. So I want to throw it over to you, Heather. Like, what are some kind of things that stuck out to you when you were playing it? Like, what are some things that you really liked about the game? Especially, like, being a Batman fan, what about this game kind of clicked with you? Other than the fact that it's just Batman as an avatar, like, was there something about the gameplay that made you feel like Batman?
I was going to say, I feel like the game itself does a really good job of putting you in his world. And, like, it just felt
I would agree with that.
Cool. Like, I mean, there are other cool superheroes, don't get me wrong, but, like, everybody wants to be Batman. Because the coolest thing about him is that he does not have superpowers. So, like, you kind of, like, as a reader and watcher and stuff, you almost, like, convince yourself, oh, I could do that. If I had the money and the time and stuff, that's attainable for me. It's clearly not attainable for any of us. Otherwise, somebody would be doing it,
he's
right?
a billionaire, too. He's essentially like an Elon Musk who's not a piece of shit.
I know. Well, that's the other thing. He's a billionaire that's not a piece of shit.
That's hard to find. And also, like,
Taylor Swift could do it.
You're right.
What's she doing? I mean, the Eras Tour's got another year, but after that, maybe she'll do Batman.
Her tour technically has saved economies of every city that she's
So she kind of already is doing it.
All right.
She's got the costumes. It's just a little different.
She just sings. She's a bard in terms of D&D terms.
She's
a bard. That's how she saves the world, one song at a time.
The only decent billionaire.
The only thing is that with the people have made this criticism of Batman before. I'm not going to really entertain it through the episode, but I think it's at least interesting to bring up. If he's a billionaire, why can't he just use his money to do everything instead of fighting crime himself? And I get it from a practical standpoint, but from a story standpoint, that's fucking boring.
It is boring.
Like,
it is boring.
Why are you trying?
You're also looking at a dude that dresses up as a bat to fight crime. Like, there's clearly a lot of childhood trauma.
Trauma and drama.
Yeah, both.
Trauma drama.
There's some trauma drama going on there. And, like, I mean, come on, Alfred should have been getting him therapy from a very young age. He probably has not had any. He witnessed
his parents murdered, for Christ's sake. Oh, spoiler alert.
What? I remember playing the Telltale games.
I need to play those too.
They're fun.
I've heard they're good.
They're fun. I like to play them through twice. So we play through once because it's like, Jamie and I will play it. And we like make the choices together and be like, all right, what are we doing? And we play through twice. And we do once is like the choices we want to make. And then we do Dick Batman, where we make all the worst decisions like right away. And
I really thought you were going to make. He's just got a big swanger.
We're just a total asshole the whole game. We're like, no, Dick Batman.
That's really funny.
I think it's like the second one, maybe they do like the flashback to the crime alley, which, you know, why are you walking down crime alley in the middle of the night?
Who gives it that name anyway? I'm sure it's like a colloquial, like a local name, like it's a nickname. But imagine
there's
just like
literally street signs in Arkham City that say crime alley.
Like, why would you? That's like, oh my god,
it's gosh. Arkham City or Arkham
That's like
Knight.
Naming something like Murder Street.
I know.
I wonder
hilarious.
What happened
it's
there.
Like, well, let's walk down here. We'll cut through
through crime alley.
Through crime alley. What could possibly happen?
But no, you're right though. The game really, to bring it back, the game really does make you feel like Batman. Like
you're like in his world.
I think putting you in the world is a really good observation because that's part of the fun of video games is the escapism. Yeah. And you can play, like, there's games that you can play, and if you don't feel like you're in the world, then it doesn't, like, Gotham is supposed to be a character.
Yeah.
Like, Gotham City is just as much of a character in Batman's world as Batman is. And Rocksteady did a fantastic job of making you feel like you're in the world of Gotham, even if you're only on one tiny island version of Gotham, right? So
it made you want to be able to go into the city.
Exactly.
It really did. They did a great job of world building, and like you had a sense of Gotham without actually being in Gotham, which was really cool.
I also think it helps not to like jump too far ahead because that the visuals are its own kind of section, but the visuals of the game kind of, and the overall aesthetic of the game, I'll leave it at the aesthetic instead of describing individual visuals, is the aesthetic is kind of a cross between like Christopher Nolan's Batman and like Batman 89.
Yeah.
Because it's got like some, the music feels a little bit more 89ish. It has all
like the nitty gritty, like the darkness, I think, of the Nolan trilogy, but like still kind of has like some of that comic booky aspect that Tim Burton brought into the 89.
And I almost wonder if it's because Paul Dini wrote the script for it, like he wrote the story with him.
It does vibe with like the animated series too, and Paul Dini had a pretty heavy hand in that.
And I mean, he was the producer, right? He was either the lead, he was one of the main writers for the animated series.
I think he was. Didn't he create Harley Quinn for that?
He created Harley Quinn. He also wrote that Heart of
Mad Love,
or the one for Mr. Freeze. He wrote that Mr. Freeze episode that gave him the tragic backstory. But no, what's cool about the game is like as you progress through Arkham Asylum, Batman will progressively get more and more gadgets. Why he didn't show up with all those gadgets in the first place, I don't know, because it's not like you are
Batman's a planner, like real life Batman. If that's a thing, totally would have had those already, but like for the game's sake,
suspend your disbelief, right?
Yeah,
you don't like otherwise it wouldn't be as fun because then when you finally get
if you have everything right away, it would be such a short game.
It really would. That's the whole point of like that's the whole conceit of like Metroid games. Like Samus has to lose all of her power-ups in order for you to explore the world and find them all and get them back.
Yeah.
Similarly with this,
like they have to give you these circumstances to be like, all right.
And at least with the sequel, Arkham City, there's a reason for it. Batman gets thrown into prison at the beginning of Arkham City. So there's a reason he doesn't have all of his stuff. It's because he's Bruce Wayne in that moment. Spoiler alert.
What? This is brand new information.
He's Bruce Wayne getting thrown in there. So in this one,
which also cracks me up because you have to kind of like put that suspension of disbelief again because you got to be like, oh, like everybody knows Bruce Wayne is going into this city, and then all of a sudden Bruce Wayne's nowhere to be seen, but Batman's everywhere.
Yeah,
like, you're like, who could afford these gadgets?
You ever hear that joke where it's like people always make fun of Superman? Like, how could you not tell Clark Kent is Superman? Yeah. But then you look at a picture of Zooey Deschanel without bangs,
and you're like, I would 100% never be able to pinpoint him, like in real life.
And I'm like, okay, that's fair. If like it's the exact same person, but
I think it was
so
like.
Funny.
I think it was Justin Timberlake was talking about like he was living in New York and he was walking around all the time and like he was saying like hardly anybody would stop him or like recognize him, and like then all of a sudden he would have a tour date in New York and everybody saw him. So it's kind of like it's like the new car thing. Like when you buy a car, you never see that car anywhere, and then you buy it and then all of a sudden everybody has that car. It's because you're not looking for it. So I guess you could chalk it up to that, like the psychology behind that or whatever.
If Bruce Wayne is able to make him his non-Batman persona different enough from Batman.
Yeah.
That makes sense because he's the playboy type of thing.
Honestly though, like however they feed me Batman, I'll buy it. You know, like I'll be like, yeah, you want me to believe that? Sure, I'm in.
So some of the items that you get, I don't know if I'm going to list every single one, mainly because I don't have a list up in front of me. And there's a lot. There's a lot of gadgets in this. You have the bat hook, you have the explosive gel, you have obviously the glide. Well, the glide is part of it. Batman can glide from the get go, but there's also like the triple hook bat hook that allows you to pull down walls. That's like the last one you get. The batarang. You also get the remote controlled batarang that you need to like
the Sonic
fly it around a corner. Yep.
You get
Sonic and remote control, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And then you get the hacker thing.
Yes,
the cryptographic.
That was always kind of fun too. The way that puzzle would work is that it has these frequencies.
It like vibrates.
You rotate the joysticks, and you have to get it at the right angle, and that was always kind of fun to me. And so Batman has to go around and explore the asylum, and as you do, you get more and more of these different gadgets, which allow you to open up different areas. And I think one of the coolest aspects of it is the stealth. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's my favorite in all of the games.
Were you more of a stealthy player, or did you kind of go a little bit more balls to the wall?
If there were guns involved, I was 100% stealth like the whole time. I do think too, though, that like that was a lot of the fun for me because like Batman's whole thing is putting like the fear of God into people.
Yes.
Like he operates on making you afraid. And like what is more terrifying than not knowing where this dude is and all of a sudden your buddy's hanging from the ceiling, like, or you turn the corner and your other buddy's passed out like by a grate, you know,
or
what I
like
mean?
the wall explodes all of a sudden.
Yeah, so like it's that idea of like he kind of becomes like a mythical figure in like the criminals' minds, where it's like there's no way this is just a dude, except it is.
I never thought about so I know they do that in the movies. They show that aspect in the movies a lot. And I never really thought about how it translated to the game. They do translate that pretty well though. Because I mean a lot of it is sold by the incidental dialogue of the enemies, and we're like, "Oh my God, where is he?
Yeah, where is this guy?"
Yep. Though the only thing that kind of takes me out of it, and I don't hate it because I don't hate it from a gameplay standpoint, but from a realistic standpoint, it's kind of silly. If you want to lose someone after you get spotted, you just hop around on the gargoyles a little time. They just can't follow you. I'm like, what? You can't follow the sport when you go to a sporting event, they have like the 3 cups on the screen. You have to follow it. I'm like, that's essentially all he's doing, but there's no tour.
And you can literally jump back to the one you were just on.
You could just
like if you just go around the room enough.
Yep.
I think though they like kind of, I mean, you can still do that in the other games, but they do kind of like take a little bit of that away in the sense like I think it's City that they start planning things up on the gargoyles and stuff like that. So you can't always land on them. Well, it might be night, but
they try to mitigate that even in this game, where some of the enemies, when you take them out, they have like the alarm around their neck. Yeah. So if you take one out silent, even if you take them out silently, eventually that alarm's going to go off. So I think you
gotta like leave that guy for last.
Yeah. Well, either that or you hang him up there and then you run the other way and you plan the next trap, like by putting like an explosive bit of gel down or this and that.
I loved the stealth movements. I thought that was so fun. And I picture like that's how he would do it. Like
100%. And well, the fact that you can, and they give you so many different options to explore, to do the stealth stuff. I mean, you have the gargoyles at the top, which was my go-to.
Yeah.
But then there's also the grates that you can walk underneath.
Those too.
You can just pop out and just grab them or whatnot. There's also the breakable walls where you could like put explosive gel.
That I didn't use as much, but it was fun when you could. But like, it just took so much to be like, all right, you gotta like set it up, but then you also have to like lure them over there and stuff, or like time it perfectly.
Yeah. And I'm the same way. I like, it was really satisfying if you could pull it off, but you never got to pull it off.
Yeah. It was always kind of like get in and get out.
Yeah.
So I felt like that took more time than I was willing to give sometimes.
I would always just go up to the gargoyles and then repel, like, and hang
so
upside
fun.
down and then just, like, do the stealth
So
takedowns
fun.
from there. Though it is funny when you think about it.
And
like,
then you're still like, I could totally be Batman. Never.
Well, he hangs
Can't
the
even do a
guys
pull
up.
up.
He like ties the dude up around his ankles and then he holds him up and looks him in the face and then just drops him.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really fucked up when you think
It's
about it.
super fucked up. It's so funny. It's like Batman doesn't kill people, but he's always like leaving them in these situations where there's like internal bleeding. They're hanging upside down. There's nobody around that's going to help them.
How much CTE has Batman caused alone, especially in the Arkham games? I was talking about it on the stream. Like all the punches are always to the dude's jaws and like skulls.
Oh
like, there's no way.
So much brain damage.
There's so much brain damage. Actually,
which loops it around to, if you are like realistically speaking, if there's a dude that can take people out this way, why are you still committing crime in Gotham? Like, especially when he's taking on like 15 different people and you're the last one standing and you're still going at him.
It's like you might have to eat the food through a straw for the rest of your life because of this guy.
But he doesn't kill people, so it's okay.
I was saying that on the stream too. It's like this is almost more sadistic than killing people. It's
so
just like he just likes to hurt people. It's
well, I mean, like, as a character, you have to assume he's really angry, right? So
you would think
he's got to like. I always pictured it as he doesn't kill people because I always took it as, I mean, obviously he says, like, you know, he talks about like, if I kill somebody, there's still the same amount of murderers in the world. Yes and no. I mean, like, if you kill the Joker, yeah, there's still technically the same amount of murderers, but a lot less people are getting murdered.
You're also taking out one dude who routinely murders who's essentially a serial killer. Yeah.
But on the other side of that, I always kind of took it as he doesn't cross that line because he doesn't know if he'll be able to come back. You know what I mean?
That makes a lot more sense, where he's so mad that he's scared if he crosses the line, he'd be the next Joker.
Yeah.
Which would be a wild Batman story for like a time loop. You know, like Batman goes to the future, becomes the Joker, and so a young Batman, or I don't know, something like that. Anyway, real quick though, the other half of the gameplay, we talked about the stealth a little bit here. We can continue on that as well as we go through this, but is the combat, the hand-to-hand combat. Yes. Now, I did a little research. That was originally going to be rhythm combat. You were going to have to time your attacks to music type of thing, or to some type of beat. You can still see remnants of it, because if you think about how the combo system works,
timing you have to time counters and stuff like that.
Exactly.
I don't know that I would like to do it to music, though.
Neither would I. I think it's a lot better. Like the combat in this game is still pretty rhythmic, but it's based off of your reactions to the combat and what enemies are doing to you.
Yeah.
So you want to, like, if you mash square. So the example I like to give, I figured it out more in my recent playthrough. When my first time I played it, I just mashed square a whole bunch and I would hit triangle when a guy was trying to attack. When you do that, you don't get any combos.
No.
Because you are constantly breaking
with the counter.
Exactly. So even the counter doesn't break it. Though. Oh, it's a massively amount of fun. The fact that you can play it both ways, where you can button mash and it's super satisfying, or if you want to try to get good,
do all those
and
combos
you rhythmically hit the attack button and make sure you actually time your attacks out, so that way when you get higher combos, you get more experience, which means you can upgrade your stuff faster.
Yeah.
Which we haven't even talked about upgrades. We'll get into that in a moment. But
I tend to like panic play games. Like when somebody's coming at me, I'm like, holy shit. I remember I like played through Doom and I was like, I'm the Doom Slayer. I was like screaming.
Doom guy.
And like I definitely like I panic shoot, and like I'm not a great gamer.
Yeah, but
the Batman game was super satisfying to figure out that timing, because the combos were just so cool.
And the fact if you could get the right combos, which I never did, I would always just do square, 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 triangle, square, 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 square.
But the counters
triangle.
were cool too.
The counters are cool. And the one, I was watching a replay or a long play of it last night in preparation for today, and there was a bunch of like finishers that I never saw because I never could do the combos well enough. He's fucking breaking dudes' legs.
Oh yeah, I love that one. He like flips them and then just
like, that dude doesn't have a knee anymore.
And then still some other Joe Schmo's gonna come at him. Like, I'm telling you, like, Josh, if we are fighting a vigilante and he breaks your leg like that, I'm out. Like,
I don't blame you.
I'm like,
now
it's
you don't
okay. He won't kill you. Like,
so I'm screaming. You'll just have a concussion. It'll be fine.
oh my god,
CTE's not that bad.
Simultaneously, like the dumbest criminals in the history of comic books, but also like Gotham's criminals are like the most educated out of all other. They all have PhDs.
We were just talking about the Riddler. He's crazy smart. He's dumb as shit, but he's crazy smart. Oh God, he shot him with a question mark gun. That would be the funniest thing to me. That's just like his ultimate thing, just a question mark gun. Some other elements that did not make it into the game though that they were considering of putting in, they were going to do driving segments where you would drive around in the Batmobile, but they scrapped it due to resources. And honestly, I think that would have kind of broken the flow of the game a little bit.
I don't know how that would have worked on Asylum.
They probably designed that was probably scrapped early enough. This is more conjecture than actual anything what I'm saying now. I would assume they scrapped it early enough before Asylum was formed. Okay. So they probably would have designed the gameplay first and then
because they brought the Batmobile in Night. In Night. And that was fun.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I know people that didn't like it, but I enjoyed it. I think some of the combat was difficult.
Mm-hmm. I have to replay Night, man. It's been a long time since I played it.
So you told me that we were going to do this, and I played them back to back. You texted me and you're like, hey, I just finished Arkham Asylum. So we should plan a time. And I was like, that's great. I finished all 3 and I'm looking to start Origins, but they're making it difficult for me. So, because I don't have a PS3. Yeah. We talked about that.
It was funny. And I was like, you only had to play Asylum, right? We're only talking about Asylum.
And I'm like, we will talk about all of it.
I mean, we'll get into, obviously we're going to break into it periodically. I'm trying to see
it's just the storylines are so fun and like,
yes.
It's so fun to be in his world that, like, I just wanted to keep going. Like, I mean, it's not fun to be in his world in the sense of, like, hey, man, in real life, that would really suck. But
especially, like, the first, like, little, it's not really a mini boss.
And they
like,
all kind of tie together. So
yeah, honestly, the Asylum was such a genius idea because that's where Batman puts all of his villains. Yeah. So a way to incorporate a bunch of his, like, his cavalcade of villains.
While still having your big bad.
Yep. And sorry, one other thing, I don't know where else to put this. I guess I could have put this in visuals, but I'm so excited. Yeah. I just want to say this now. Batman's cape in this game. One, looks fucking awesome.
It really does.
And you want to know why? A single staff member worked on that cape for 2 years.
Oh my God.
And there's over 700 animations along with sound effects.
Do you have their name?
No, I don't. I didn't. Someone worked on a cape for 2 years just to make it flow.
Doing the Lord's work.
It looks great.
It was really cool.
It's noticeable.
There is nothing that takes me out of a game faster than like clothing that will like go through the character. It's always capes too.
It's like, hard to animate that.
Yeah,
shit.
I imagine. I mean, I know I couldn't do it
because it has to interact. It's not like they can pre-program it in. It has to be interactive.
Yeah, that's the thing. It has to move with the gamer and how they're moving the characters. So like, it's beautiful, but also like his suit and cape, the way they like start getting torn up as the night goes on, without it being like obnoxiously torn up. Like
yeah. It's a really good subtle touch to show like this is tough. Like this is what he's up against. It's all one night.
That's
really
brutal. Really
good way. There are examples of being able to tell story through gameplay, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
It's very hard to tell story through gameplay, and usually it can't be like major plot points. It's usually done through exposition or dialogue or whatnot. But in gameplay, it's hard to always get that narrative through, and there was
a lot of detail.
That's a really subtle way to do it. You also get more narrative through the gameplay just by seeing how the Asylum changes as you progress through the story. Like once Poison Ivy gets out, then there's those poison pods everywhere that I was trying to reference before, the seedy underbelly.
And it like slowly becomes like more and more overgrown as the time goes on. Which is pretty cool.
Something else that we should talk about is actually I was going to go to boss fights, but first we should talk about the leveling up system. We've touched on all the different gadgets that you can get and how you use them to solve puzzles, and it's cool. You can backtrack and everything like that. But there's also a leveling up system where every time you are in combat or you fight an enemy or you collect a Riddler trophy, you see bats fly. It's almost like you're collecting bats. I understand it's a cool visual
the
flourish.
Points and the bats go.
It's essentially a way for you to see experience points. The bats are experience points. That
I just love the idea too of like these bats just following him around and just like leaking out of him. Like...
Oh, he just beat the shit out of that guy. Just goes across. Like, so man, ridiculous. He trained those bats really well. He's like, I gotta show off everywhere I go.
Let me get my bats out. He's just like pulling them out of his shoes.
So you can upgrade your armor, which allows you to have take more hits.
Definitely.
You can upgrade your attacks. You can upgrade your batarang to how much damage it does. And also, if you upgrade it enough, you can. I think you end up getting to throw like 2 or 3 batarangs if you upgrade it well enough, right? Something like that.
2. Maybe it is 3.
I
don't remember, but you can upgrade that.
Yeah, and that's super
you can,
helpful
like,
for later
fire
on.
in like combats, so like it takes out 2 enemies. And...
Yep. And you do need the batarangs for some of the boss fights, which they give it to you. It's not like you have to go out of your way to find it. I think that's one of the benefits. There's lots of games that I've been not playing recently, but there's games that I'll play where it's like you'll get an item that's not mandatory, but then when you fight a boss, it almost feels like the item should have been mandatory and that you shouldn't have made me search for it.
Or when you can't beat a boss because you don't have the item yet.
Yep. And
that's infuriating.
Well, because they make the item not mandatory, so when you get to the boss, like this boss you can beat without it. It's kind of like...
But it's going to cost you like your entire evening and all of your rage.
Well, it's like, with the Mega Man games, which I'm sure you've seen Jamie get mad at.
That's exactly what I'm thinking
times,
of. Where he knows exactly what to take in with him and stuff, and like I would never pick that up.
It's all. And then
I would just be like pissed off the whole time.
I would say in Asylum they do a really good job of gating everything off, where like they do plenty of things to be like, to make you think, why can't I get to this yet? I feel like I should be able to get to this, but then you don't have the gadget. And then you get a new
gadget and you're like, oh shit.
And you immediately be like, I know where I can use this.
You want to go right back to it just to explore, and like they did a really cool job of like building the world. And like I think one of my favorite things was that he had like a mini bat cave on this like little island. Like he was just so prepared. He's like, I'm gonna need this someday.
But he didn't bring all his gadgets there.
I know. He forgot his bat claw, but
one of his most iconic items, and he's like, nah, I don't need it. Fuck that. So you can level up all those different things. Before we go into bosses, is there anything that we didn't get to talk about with terms of any of the gameplay stuff we've brought up? The stealth, the combat, the anything like that you want to touch on before we just talk about some of the bosses?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's like super cool too. Like, you're not just like running and stuff, but like I love the gliding, and I don't think you can in Asylum. You can't like dip and stuff, right?
No, I don't think so.
But you can use your grappling hook to just like zip up to things and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think you can zip up to like launch off into a jump.
No, that doesn't come till later.
But you can use the grappling hook to zip up to different places. Like it'll grab onto like railings and shit like that. And
I always thought that was cool. Like that would be so fun to do.
It was also fun if you could break the physics a little bit and there was like a wall in between but so you would somehow shoot the grapple hook through the wall because of the game breaking physics. And Batman would hit the wall, just go and then just jut to the right or left and then go around it. You're like, okay, that's odd, but it is what it is.
So I thought like moving through, like, I mean, like the animation and all that, I mean, that takes it back to the cape. Like,
yeah, it's really good.
The cape moves with all of that, and it's just really cool.
It's a really cool moment. It's a really cool set. Like when you see it, just looks cool. I mean,
and I just love too, like, you just like look up at something, you're like, I need to get up there. I don't feel like running. Yeah, you pretty much can. Like, other than like the tops of the and like there's like some tops of the buildings that like you can only go up so high before the game stops you. And
they usually have something like metal spikes or something to indicate like, you shouldn't try to grapple on this. You'll impale yourself.
Batman would totally be able to do it, but
probably he'd figure a way around it. Some of the bosses,
he's like, there's a rock there, I can't go. He's like, sorry, you're on your own.
Go get him, Jimmy. Wait, Jim Gordon. I was like, I was trying to think, what's Commissioner Gordon's first name?
Commissioner Gordon.
No, your first name's Commissioner, right? So some of the bosses, I was trying to think about this, and I don't have a list in front of me. I'm not well prepared as I should be, I guess. But I'm pretty sure there's only really like 3 bosses in the game. There's like Zaz is kind of like a little mini boss where he's like the first like you have to sneak up on him. Like you can't go in guns ablaze because he's got a dude held hostage, so you have to sneak up on him. But that's not really a boss fight because
it's not like difficult. It's more just like you're getting the sneaking.
Well, it's a way to teach you. That's what good game design is, where they're
teaching you a new mechanic.
They teach you a new mechanic. They teach you the stealth through that. And then the very next section is a larger open area with a bunch of gargoyles and shit. And it's I forget exactly where it is in the facility, but it's like in the first building you're at in Arkham, and you get to explore. It's a big open area, and there's like 5 or 6 guys, and a couple of them have guns, so they escalate it right then and there, where like they show you the basics of stealth with the Zaz thing, and then they bring it up a notch with the next area where there's only like 4 or 5 enemies compared to
like that early on too. The guns are pretty intense. Like if you aren't stealthy,
I think it's only one gun too. I don't remember though.
But like they make it difficult enough. Like the guns do damage.
Oh yeah, they fuck you up.
I was always dumping points into like ballistic armor like pretty early on because like I don't know. Like once I upped the difficult, because I played it probably on easy or normal. The first time around, and then this time around I played it on hard. And
did you notice a big step up in the? Because sometimes people play on a hard and they're like, it's just a little bit more of the same. The enemies just take a few more hits.
I feel like it was harder, but it's been so long since I played it the first time that maybe
you don't quite remember the difference. I gotcha.
I also feel like I play more games now than I did when Asylum came out. So like it was harder in the sense of like, you couldn't sneak up as well. Like you couldn't. I feel like when it was on easy, you could like walk up right behind a guy or whatever and like just like take him out, whatever. And then like it was harder like in the sense that they would notice you earlier and stuff like that. But I don't know that it was like anything that I still enjoyed the gameplay. So for me, like the difficulty
didn't turn you off. Already.
Yeah.
I gotcha. So there's a lot of moments like that where they'll teach you like small little, it's like little micro bosses, I guess. It's not a boss, like I said, but it's like a micro encounter where it's teaching you a new mechanic like the stealth. And they're also like from the very beginning you have to fight a bunch of inmates. It teaches you the basics of combat. The bosses that I can think of, I would consider Killer Croc the one where you're running through the sewer. That one's interesting. Oh, it's terrifying.
I hate being chased. There's zero part of me that enjoys it. It's just not fun.
Same.
Immediately my anxiety spikes and I'm like, this is terrible.
that one specifically. So actually real quick, the bosses, if I remember, and if you remember any extra ones, let me know. Killer Croc, Poison Ivy, and then Joker as the final. I don't think there's anyone else that I can think of that you like. Bane.
There's Bane.
But Bane's fight is a redo of it gets like that same boss mechanic of Bane.
Like the
repeated.
Titans.
Yeah. You fight them all the time.
They're like mini bosses, I feel like. Like they're definitely more difficult, but you do fight them often.
Well,
it's like, oh crap.
When we get to the Joker, that's my biggest complaint with the Joker, but we'll get to that in just a moment. But yeah, with Killer Croc, it's terrifying. I'm with you.
I hate being chased. And the only thing I hate more than that is like water I can't see through. Like
you and Courtney, man, my wife. Same
tell
thing.
me there's a shark behind me, and I will like shit my pants. Like it's just like not enjoyable for me. The shark will be like, oh man, the first time I played it, I don't even know. We were what, like 20?
I mean, if it was 2009, so we would have been like
21-ish,
something like that.
Something like that. I don't know. I was a wuss. But it was the middle of the night. Jamie had gone to bed. I'm playing this game. I'm God. You know what? I am playing this. I'm going to beat this game because, you can only call out of work so long before you got to start getting back. So I was like, those were the days, man. It's just like, but I was playing it. I hated it. My body was having like a visceral reaction. Like it was like, I don't enjoy this. Like this is not fun for me.
It's
and I
very
literally woke Jamie up and I was like, I need you to come do this for me.
at like 2:00 in the morning.
He was so mad, and he's like, "Are you serious right now?" And I was like, "I can't do it, man. I can't do it. It's really getting on under my skin." Like, I did it this past time though. I did make Jamie do parts of it, and then I was like, "You know what? No, I'm gonna be an adult. I'm in my 30s. I have a child. I'm doing this."
Jace, look, are you proud of mommy? Or sorry,
I woke Jace up at 1 a.m. and I'm like, Jace, look at this.
Hold on. The thing that's so intimidating about it too is that so for those who have not played it, the boss fight with Killer Croc is you're in these sewer tunnels, and like you said, there's a bunch of floating wooden boards.
You're like collecting spores.
Yes, you're collecting spores, which we'll get into the story as to why that's important in a moment. You're collecting spores, and this is Killer Croc's lair. Like you said, you can't see him under the water because the water's all murky because it's a sewer. And so you're running across these boards.
You're walking. You have to go slow. Well, you can run to a certain point.
Well, you can run if you don't.
You have to like stop and slow down again.
Because he will eat the shit out of you.
But the like running would get my heart going too, because you see the like meter or whatever going up, and like the music starts getting more intense, and I'm like, I'm being chased and I hate it. Like, once
you figure out the mechanic of how to beat him, it removes a lot of the fear.
The first play,
but it's still intense.
Like,
it's
pretty
scary.
intense.
Well, because you see him.
Croc is a terrifying character. Well, isn't he in the beginning of the game? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
I was about to say that the opening of the game is so fucking smart because you have Batman escorting the Joker through Arkham. So you see all the places you're going to be exploring later on in the game. Joker, Mark Hamill, shout out to Marky Mark. That he's like kind of
it's got such great
monologue.
Dialogue.
Yes, exactly. And you see a bunch of villains, and that's where you see
just
Killer
having
Croc.
The time of his life. And you're like, oh, this is not right.
Very
you know it's coming. You know a Joker moment's coming.
And you see
But they
Killer
incorporate
Croc.
like a lot of other characters that you're like, oh, I'm going to have to deal with that later.
And the Croc is specifically, they call a lot of attention to it.
Yeah. And he's terrifying.
He's fucking huge. He's like
massive.
They have like a giant ass elevator for like other mutated inmates, and he's too big for it.
Yeah.
He has to crouch down, and he's like all curled up in a ball.
Which they did him in Origins, and like he looked totally different.
Did he?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull this up so you can see, because I'm gonna drive myself crazy.
But so the Killer Croc fight, you're walking across these planks so that way Croc can't feel the sensations of the water ripple, or at least not as much. But periodically he can track them. So thankfully the camera will pan to him right away, and he'll pop out of the water. All you have to do is throw a batarang at him, and then he goes back under. He goes,
like, once you figure it out, it's like fine. But
it's just funny too, because if you think about the dynamic of it, he pops out. He's like, I'm gonna eat the shit out of you. And then you throw a batarang. Oh, my eye, and falls back into the water. Because the way he holds it, he's like, my eye.
Like, I took care of it.
It's so fucking funny. But you have to explore this maze. The sewer is a maze, and so it's an interesting boss fight because the objective isn't to beat him. The objective is it's almost like they chose a stealth boss fight, but did it in a way that wasn't complete bullshit. Yeah. And I actually kind of like, it's scary, it's intense. I think it's
psychological.
Yeah.
In the sense that, like, while you're playing it, you're just letting your own anticipation build up.
Yes.
So it's cool that they're like playing off of your emotions instead of like the gameplay itself. Like, the gameplay itself, when you break it down, is super simple.
Yeah.
But they really do, with the music and everything, and like not being able to see him and stuff. Like, they really do just kind of like play off of, like, they know you're going to be sweating it.
And there's also like these like fence grates that are like pushed up, so periodically he'll just bust through them, and all of a sudden you see this giant
cool,
thing.
And then, like, you're not.
Like, oh god, there he is! It's terrifying. It's a really good boss fight, and I was realizing this. Like, the game, like I said, pretty much has like 3 boss fights. It's Croc, Ivy, and Joker, and it's kind of similar to Metroid. Hence the whole Metroidvania thing. I didn't realize it till I was thinking about it before you came over. In the original Metroid, you fight Ridley is one of the bosses, Kraid is one of the other bosses, and then Mother Brain is the final boss. Okay. And they both, Ridley and Kraid, both have their own lair at different portions of the world.
Like similar like mechanics and stuff too.
I mean, the mechanics are very different to what Batman does, but it's kind of it's a similar in terms of the structure, where you backtrack a lot and you explore over the world of Metroid. I forget what the name of what planet it is in the original game, but you find Kraid's lair, you find Ridley's lair, and then you need to beat both of them in order to get to Mother Brain, and then you fight Mother Brain. Similarly with this, you explore all over the Asylum.
To the next part of the story.
I would say this game, granted this game has like what's the math? Like 25 years, almost 20, like over 20 years more experience after the original Metroid came out. So it does have that going for it. There's a lot more better story reasons for everything in Batman than there was in Metroid, which there was none, and that's not a bad thing. It's just different. You can't even compare the stories of the two games; they're so vastly different. But the structure kind of reminds me of it. There's these exploratory worlds with two bosses they both have their own separate layer on opposite sides.
Big bad.
Yep, and then you have your big bad, which. Well, Metroid's final boss is bullshit. This one is...
You're so salty about it still.
So I didn't play it as a kid. I beat it for the first time somewhat recently, and I used save states, and I'm going to save that for another time because I got lots of anger towards that game. It's a great game, but I have lots of issues with it. Some trauma drama for damn sure. So we talked about Killer Croc. The other boss fight that we were mentioning before was Poison Ivy.
My fellow ginger.
That's right. That's... Poison Ivy, obviously she's always a sex symbol in Batman's world.
She has like no pants in this game.
None.
Barely a shirt.
I don't mind it. But no, apparently a shirt, did you say?
Like barely a shirt.
I thought you said apparently a shirt. I'm like, what does that mean?
But she has like 3/4 sleeves, which cracks me up.
Of just vines.
She's like, I need to cover this. Like, no, the sleeve. Like the sleeve from her thing comes down, doesn't it?
Oh, I don't remember.
I don't know. It's a weird outfit,
all I saw was boobs.
Boobs and butt.
That's pretty much
TNA.
It. But that boss fight was pretty interesting, though, because she's in a plant, which makes sense.
Yeah.
She's Poison Ivy. It's barricaded, so you have to throw batarangs at the plant until
you have to like time it too.
And
then deal with the shit on the ground.
Because she'll send enemies for you. She'll also have the plants kind of like bring up like
so
vines to
like,
different
keep,
sections.
Like, your footing and make sure you're not in the area that they pop up.
Exactly. Did you like this boss fight? Like, did you enjoy playing it? I
actually thought it was fun.
I would agree with you on that.
I mean, I think it was very like simple, and it reminded me of like old school gaming, which I think is why I liked it.
It very much, and it's not that far removed from it. It reminds me of like PS2 era platformers. Like Jak and Daxter would have a boss fight like this. It's very much like that, and that's not an insult to it. I don't think. In fact, I would argue this is the most boss fight-ish boss out of in the entire game. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Because Killer Croc I liked, but it's not. It's an unconventional boss fight. You're kind of doing a little bit of stealth, a little bit of dodging, a little bit of like
that whole reflexes. Thing is mostly just make you be afraid.
Yes. And Poison Ivy, they do a good job at making her intimidating. Like she's definitely you should be afraid of her because she can fucking murder you. But the fight itself was just kind of it was interesting because you would have to throw batarangs at her at the plant that she was at till it weakens her to the point, like you said, while dodging the plants, while beating up other enemies. And then you
now see, difficulty wise, I noticed more of a difference with that than I did like other things. Like it was definitely harder because you do have to be more specific with your timing, and I feel like things were happening quicker or more often, maybe like
I could see that
than they were on easy mode.
That would make sense. And the boss itself is fine. I
don't know if that's true, but that's how it felt.
I mean, I can say, at least I played on normal, and I can at least say, like, I like the boss fight for what it tries to do. I think I'm bad at it because it took me so long to take her down.
Well, I feel like, too, when you button smash as a gamer, which I often do, like, I am a run in and figure it out as you go kind of person. It's hard to kind of take that step back and be like, oh, I have to slow down. because you just want to like keep going, and like you really do, you have to slow down and time things, and like I'm not necessarily great at that.
Same. I feel you on that.
But it was I did enjoy that one overall though. Like I do think it, like, for some reason it had some like nostalgia for me for like older games, and like it felt very much like, oh, this is a boss.
It's the most boss-like out of all, for sure. Yeah. And once you knock her down with the batarangs, then you go up and you draw the explosive gel on it, and then you explode it, which was a really cool way to use the different gadgets. Yeah.
And stuff.
And you just kind of rinse, wash, and repeat that a bunch of times until you beat her. And then the poison pods she's left all over the island are dead at that point.
Yeah.
They dissipate, which is good. But once you beat her, actually, that is like that is the boss you beat right before you go to confront Joker.
Okay.
Like, it's literally like, once you beat her, you leave the whatever, the greenhouse, whatever the hell it's called. And you see fireworks off in the distance because the Joker
he's inviting you to his party.
Yep. The showmanship in Joker, man. He's a fun villain. I think that's why he's
super fucked up.
Why do you think that he is one of the most, not endearing, but one of the most popular villains in pop culture? Like, I know it's kind of a little bit of a tangent, but the question pops into my mind. Why do you think that? So,
well, I mean, like, I feel like villains are in right now. Like, you see a lot of like the teeny poppers like always go through their phases where they like the villains and stuff.
Everyone goes through their emo phase.
Yeah, their emo phase. And people like definitely romanticize the Joker and Harley Quinn.
Oh, 100%. Even though it's a fucked up, like, abusive relationship.
It's super fucked up.
Yeah.
I always like the Joker though, because you never know his motive. Like, he doesn't necessarily have one other than entertainment.
Yeah.
And like, he is not a villain that's sitting there like trying to figure out who Batman is or anything like that. Like, he doesn't care. Like,
he knows who Batman is. That does not. He doesn't. Like,
I think in like City, he figures out who he is, but like he's disappointed that he figured it out or something, right?
Yeah, he kind of. What is interesting about Joker is that, granted, I'm not an expert, but like from what I've gleaned from all the Batman media I've partook in, whatever. He's only there to be Batman's foil. Like, that's all he cares about. He doesn't care about like all of his secret plans. He only wants to do it if Batman is there. He doesn't want the world to exist without Batman, because then he wouldn't have a purpose anymore.
He is like just a super effed up dude, and he still somehow manages to make you crack up. Like, Mark Hamill has some great lines in these games. Yep. Like, he really does. And like, he delivers them so perfectly. Have you ever watched a video of him like doing the Joker's voice?
I think I probably in passing. Yeah.
I definitely recommend like going on YouTube and finding some, because it's like very entertaining to see him slip into that and then like right back out.
Yeah.
And like, because it's just so different, and like, but yeah, he's you never know like what's going through his head exactly. Like, he doesn't necessarily have a motive. He doesn't necessarily have an origin story. Like, it's not like you sit there and you look at the Joker and you're like, oh, somebody killed his wife and now he's really fucked up about it and mad and he's gonna get revenge. Like, his story always changes. Like, depending on what comic you follow and stuff, like some of them have,
because like, they did it in the Killing Joke. I know that was one of the first.
Well, the Killing Joke, he has like, that was like the first time I remember anyway, where like he had like a backstory.
Yeah,
but even that, you don't know if it's true.
That's kind of what makes him so interesting. You don't know what is actually true about him and what's not.
Like, if you listen to like the voice memos and stuff in the game, is it Asylum that has them? Right?
Yeah, they have voice memos.
Tapes.
Yeah.
Like, he kind of like tells you what he thinks like you want to hear about, like, I'm pretty sure it was Asylum where he's talking about like, you know, his dad took him to the circus, and like he's giving you a trauma backstory that like to a T would describe how he got the way he is, but he's making it all up.
That isn't that a very like sociopathic thing to do, like to know what people want to hear and just play into it,
and the ability to just like lie, and not feel any way about it, or like
it's just another day. It's just another...
everything he does is to entertain himself. Yeah, like. And he truly, I don't know, like he's just a fun villain. I know it's generic, but like you can't have Batman without the Joker.
No,
like,
it's the same reason why, like, for years, just to go back to the James Bond thing, you needed Blofeld as the villain for James Bond. Now, granted, that's a whole nother legal rights thing that stopped Blofeld from being a Bond villain for years. But I will save that nerdery for the Still Bonding podcast. But no, I was just curious your thoughts on it, because like Joker's everywhere. Like he's one of the most popular characters, let alone villains, but just characters in general.
He wants like Batman to love him as much as he loves Batman, which is also entertaining. Like he loves Batman. It
is kind of amusing. Yeah, you're right. He just wants and he wants to like. He wants to see how far he can push Batman. You see it all the time.
He's like a toddler. Like you know how like toddlers push boundaries because they like your reaction and they're interested in your reaction. Like that's all he cares about. Like
he just wants to see what Batman's reaction. That's really funny. I never thought of it that way.
Like Batman, just ignore him. He'll go away.
That's really funny. I never
stop hitting.
No more concussions, Batman. So that actually brings us...
just doing it to push buttons.
He's in his three-nager stage right now.
Yeah, right. He's a three-nager. Terrible too, three-nager.
Oh my god! But since we're talking about the Joker, that leads us to the final boss.
Yes,
the Joker himself. What are your thoughts on the final boss? So I've led off with the last two. I want you to lead off with this one. What are your thoughts with the Joker?
I kind of thought it was more annoying than anything else. Like storyline wise, I liked it. But like mechanic wise, I was very frustrated because anytime it's something like you can get so far, but then you have to like watch how often you're hit and stuff like that. Or like, I mean, like he essentially is like a Titan.
Yeah.
And so you're not necessarily like fighting the Joker. You're more fighting like the minions in between and like... Then you just, I don't even remember what you have to do.
That's why I thought I was kind of, and that's why I thought it was kind of a lame boss fight. You don't fight the Joker.
No.
Like Poison Ivy, technically you're not fighting her, but you're fighting.
It's not like the Joker's down there smashing you in the face. It's just like, oh, dodge him, hit him.
Exactly.
He goes up and does his thing, and now you fight this.
And with Poison Ivy, you're fighting an extension of Poison Ivy. She's controlling the plants to do this to you, so you feel like you're fighting her. Killer Croc, same thing. You're fighting him in some way, shape, or more by dodging him because you can't stand up against him like physically. With the Joker, there's like two phases to it. There's the initial phase where you're in like this kind of like little mini arena. There's balconies up top, and you're fighting two Titans, and there'll be enemies that will jump down from the balconies and you have to fight. I didn't know this. I was watching a long play of it. You can use your like triple hook shot grapple hook thing and pull them off the balconies before they jump down, and it will knock them out.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I fought all of them.
But you have to have that like quick fire.
You have to be able to get good with it. Yeah. It's tough. It's tough to be because you have to.
You have to do it like immediately too, because if you don't, like, there's too many guys in there. I feel like to pull it off. Then.
Oh yeah, you have to start it from the get go. I did not know that. So when I first played it, I was getting so fucking pissed because there's so many enemies everywhere.
Yeah, I think like the first time I played through, I didn't know that, and then I figured it out the second time, and like I was like, this was a lot easier this time. Like
so
to be
much
able to
easier.
just like, or you can like knock them into the wall. And it'll knock them out because it like electrocutes them or whatever. So like they definitely want you to use the environment, but I feel like they didn't really pull that into the rest of the game, so it didn't feel natural to me. Well, other than like the stealth stuff.
So they have you fight those Titans a lot throughout the game. So I think they utilize it earlier in the game. The problem is like you've already done those little mini boss Titan fights like 3 times at this point.
Yeah, so it was kind of like anticlimactic then.
Exactly. So when
it was more just like a nuisance. It's like I got to do all the same stuff I've been doing. I thought it would be like harder or different, or like I'd have to learn something different,
or like so generally a boss should be a test of the skills that you've learned, and it does do that. Like, I could understand the first phase being the Titans thing.
Yeah.
I actually have no issue with that. It's when you go to the second phase, when Joker injects himself with that Titan serum, and he hulks out. His rib cage is literally on the outside of his body. It's fucking gnarly to look at, man. Like,
and then you have to, like, believe that he's just okay after that. Like
that he still somehow has his mind still, even though all the other Titans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like they got you believing that for Batman too, and like I guess that they're trying to draw like a similarity there. Like, you know, Batman is such a mental game too.
Yeah.
Like not like the video game, but like as a character.
The character, yeah.
Like his mind does not break, you know, like, and so I guess they're trying to draw another similarity of like Joker is the Joker. The same way that like Batman is Batman. He's not Bruce Wayne. He's Batman. Like Bruce Wayne's the mask for him.
Yeah. And they draw that parallel really, that like you said, they draw that parallel super well with that moment. And we'll get into that in the story. But with the final, I think what's a letdown about the Joker fight is that you don't fight him, like you said.
Yeah.
And you like you described it pretty much perfectly. You dodge the Joker, he jumps up there, you fight some of his guys, you pull him down, and you rinse, wash, and repeat.
Yeah.
The coolest thing about
you're watching it and you know, like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to do this 4 or 5 times.
Exactly. And there's no upping the difficulty. Like, there's more enemies that get thrown at you, but it doesn't feel like that much of a challenge, all things considered. The coolest thing about the Joker fight, besides how the Joker looks, I think the Joker looks fucking really cool, terrifying. The way you beat him, and it's all done in a cutscene. It's a really cool cutscene. Batman, you've pretty much knocked him down 3 times, beaten the shit out of him, and then you have to dodge him when he's doing these slow swipes. It's a bummer. But Batman puts the explosive gel on his knuckles, and then like, oh my gosh, it's so cool.
It's such a badass move.
Right?
It's such he'll fuck his hand up. He doesn't care. He's like, let's just do this.
And that's how he finishes off Joker.
That's how he approaches everything.
Just, I'm going to fuck my hand up, but I'm going to do this anyway.
Like, it's just full commitment.
That's how he approaches everything?
Yeah. Like full commitment.
Like even with his me time, that's how he approaches everything. It's going to fuck my hand up.
Just going to fuck my hand up.
Oh my gosh.
Let's get some of this explosive gel. Alfred!
This is not the lube I was expecting.
Don't mix those up.
Why is it burning?
Why is it burning? Joker's like, hey, this is just kind of getting warm, and that's it.
he swapped it out by he puts the explosive gel in his lube bottle, and he breaks.
God damn it, Alfred!
I told you not to switch these up. This is my me time bottle. This is the Joker time bottle. Master Bruce, why do you have them on your dresser?
Both of them.
Why do you have both of them on your dresser?
Don't ask questions. That's not what I pay you for. What I did say was that he approaches everything like full commitment. And I'm sure that too.
Oh my god.
And that's a wrap.
Yeah, I know, right? That's it. That's still loading, folks. No, we're gonna move on now that we've discussed Batman's
Let's move on to our sponsors. KY.
KY explosive gel.
The good kind, not like the Joker kind.
Let's get into the aesthetics. I don't know how long we'll go with this, but the overall aesthetics, visuals, and music and all that good stuff. I'm bad. The reason I kind of put this one in the middle is I'm bad at describing these things. I don't really know how else to say it looks cool and it sounds good.
It does, though.
It does. It looks cool. I think we talked about the cape. I think in general, Batman, the way Batman looks, I like his outfit in the game. I think the overall visual style of the Joker is really cool, even before he like turns Super Hulk and everything like that. A lot of
it's like classic Joker
yes
vibes, and like Batman's very cool. I mean, obviously the outfit and everything, but he's just larger than life. You know, like he's taller than everybody, and like look at his thighs. They're like the size of like a normal person's head.
I know, like, right? Batman's just
just full on ripped.
Batman's designs were based off of Jim Lee's designs for this game, and the Joker was based off of Killing Joke to an extent. They it's not 1-to-1 by any stretch, but they kind of took inspiration from Joker's the design of Joker and Killing Joke.
I think Jim Lee's Batman too, though, is like always my favorite rendition. Like it's just so beautiful.
I don't know the comics well enough, so I'll have to take your word for it.
He did if I ever got like a full sleeve,
Yeah, like a tattoo sleeve. Yeah,
I would do like the Hush Batman Catwoman kiss. It's so good. It's such a pretty beautiful scene. But yeah, he's always drawn like larger than life and intimidating.
I mean, Batman's very intimidating in this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool Easter eggs in the visuals as well that I think this is what I can talk about with this. I'm bad at necessarily describing what I like and dislike about designs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, other than the fact that it's dark, it's moody, it's gritty. The color palette honestly works, even though you would think you'd get tired of kind of like the same grays and blacks, but they do a good job of exploring that. Holy shit. Sorry. One major thing we didn't even touch on in the gameplay, detective mode. I don't know how we went.
Oh, yeah.
We are an hour and a half in.
And we're just now talking about detective mode.
Yeah, and we're just now talking about detective mode.
What a lifeline.
And I thought about it because we were talking about the visual aesthetics. When you go into detective mode,
that like night vision-ish.
So detective mode, listeners, is basically a way for Batman to see, and for you, the player, to see all the different things that you can break, whether it's breakable walls, whether it's like devices you can hack with the Sonic thing. It's a way for you to see all the different... You can also
like map out your enemies in the room, which is nice.
A way for you to see all that.
Sometimes it does feel a little cheap.
Yeah, that's my biggest complaint with it. And also all the beautiful artwork they do, you don't see it for like 70% of the game because you're in detective mode so much.
Yeah, I found myself turning detective mode off. Like I would like map some stuff out. Like it's really nice to I loved it for figuring out where the guns were. Mm-hmm. So you like knew who you wanted to take out or like where you wanted to be, whatever, in relation to the guns. But I would find myself like before I would like stealthily attack somebody, I would turn it off because I wanted to see the art of like the takedowns and stuff. And like, especially the last takedown. The last takedown was always really cool. And like signified it was like the last one.
That slow motion punch. Really selling the concussion.
So bummed if I forgot to take it off before doing it because like it just takes away from it.
I'm with you. And I mean, I'm going to say it right now, props to us for being able to incorporate detective mode into the discussion of aesthetics, because it really is like that. I mean, it's not the main thing. Its primary purpose was gameplay. Yeah. But like it really has a huge effect on the world around you in terms of visuals. Like detective mode is really cool. It makes you feel like Batman because of it. Yeah,
it is cool. But no, I agree. I think like, I mean, you're essentially taking all this like hard work that all the developers do and everything and the game designers, and then you're just like, now make it green. Like
pretty much
putting like a Twilight filter over it.
Everyone's just sparkling like vampires. Robert Pattinson and Batman. There we go. So yeah, detective mode is cool. I don't know what else to say about it. I feel like we could have gone more into it, but we're already this far in and I don't want to like backtrack too much. But detective mode is a super important part of the game. It's one of the core gameplay mechanics. And it's always important. It's one of the main ways that you're able to figure out where you need to backtrack, because you can see things through detective mode that like you'll see all the walls you can explode before you get explosive gel, so you remember to go back to them later on, that kind of thing. Or
but to like the artist credit, like they do make it so like if you're not in detective mode, you can look at a wall and you have like an idea of like, oh, that might be something.
There's usually like little holes and stuff in it.
But I mean, like, detective mode definitely helps and is definitely crucial in some parts.
Now, the reason I remember detective mode, besides the fact of the different aesthetics, there's a hidden room in Warden Sharp's office that you can't see in detective mode. And you could break down with the little tri-claw batarang thing. Or not batarang thing. And that was the hint for Arkham City before Arkham City was announced. That was so well hidden, the devs had to leak it themselves about that room existing because no one found it.
I did not find that naturally. I found that after people told me online.
That would just be having to make sure
cool,
that.
though.
Yeah. And the only way I think you could find it naturally is if you happen to have that weapon out in Warden Sharp's room, or that gadget out, which why would you? And then look at the right wall and see that the 3 things show up for you to pull it down. Something else with the overall visual aesthetic of it, or like hit little Easter eggs in the visuals. Maybe you already know this, but I think you'll get if you don't, you'll get a kick out of this. In the where did I write this down at? In the observation room, there's a ticker display that goes across, like one of those red little tickers, digital ticker displays, and it says, "Dr. Clooney, please report to gynecology."
Does it really?
Yeah.
I don't think I ever noticed that.
I didn't either.
That's
I
so funny.
saw it in the Did You Know gaming video for this game. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's such a great little Easter egg to,
That's awesome.
to George
what
Clooney.
a cool nod.
And also to the ER nod as well. And
Yes.
It's kind of like this
That's amazing.
dual nod to George Clooney. That was
That's
really
amazing.
fucking cool. There was a contest that GameStop held as well, where the winner of it got their likeness put in the game.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah, and the winner can be found as one of the.
Was it just like you enter the contest, or did you have to do something?
I don't know exactly what it was. I didn't look too much more into it.
That's cool.
The winner is one of the inmates in the penitentiary. So like they used his likeness as one of the inmates. They apparently also included some of the inmate's name in like on the winner's name, if you zoom in at Joker's guest list, his name appears at the bottom of the guest list and stuff like that. I thought that was really, really cool.
What a sick brag. Like that's how I would like introduce myself at parties. I'd be like, "Hi, I'm Heather. I was in Arkham Asylum."
Isn't that wild?
No context. Just I was in Arkham Asylum. Goodbye.
So now, one other thing they did with kind of the overall set, making you feel like you're in Arkham, right? Because that's kind of what the aesthetic's all for, to push that feeling.
Yeah.
If you're in the medical facility, you can hear messages over the loudspeaker advertising the Asylum's website.
Yes.
You could actually
go to that.
Yeah, it's down now. But
I remember going to that though. That was cool.
That's such a cool, and you could find behind the scenes stuff if you could actually like log into the employee portal. Like if you could like reverse engineer it yourself and get like behind the scenes stuff and like little extra trailers
that was like a really
videos.
Cool add-on.
I wish more games did shit like that.
I love stuff like that, especially something as big as Batman. Like, there's so much crap you can put in there and like not even touch the surface. Like, it's such a long history and everything. So I feel like too, like Batman fans, like they're Batman fans. You know what I mean? Like, there's definitely stuff that like casual fans will get, but like you can totally. I don't know, anything that has that large of a fandom, like I just love Easter eggs. I think they're so fun because it's just like a way of like it's a little love letter to the gamer. Which
you bring this
up.
We
appreciate you.
You bring it up. They do a lot of that in this game.
Yes.
Like with all the nods, specifically with a lot of the Joker riddles was a really good way to include Easter eggs. Like there's the one I never knew about this villain. I'm sure they're like a D-list villain, but Tweedledum and Tweedledee, because they have the little
worse
seesaws.
Than Calendar Man.
Calendar Man's room is fucking terrifying though. If I remember
Tweedledum and Tweedledee are like Mad Hatter lackeys, aren't they?
I have no idea.
Think they are.
You would know better than I would. I don't know well enough.
Which the Mad Hatter also is like, you know who I always hate? Professor Pig. I hate him. He's not in this game. They actually brought him in Arkham Knight or Arkham City.
Does he look like a pig or something?
He wears like a pig mask. And
that's like very Saw-esque. No, thank you.
Yeah, well, and he's like cutting people. It's Arkham Knight, because isn't that where like they find like victims hung up throughout the whole city?
I think so.
It's him doing it. He always makes me so uncomfortable because it's just like, I don't understand how somebody can have that in their brain and then want to put it out into the world. Like,
well, what is it? That reminds me. Years ago, I did an episode on the game Manhunt, which was from Rockstar.
Yeah.
And the final boss of that game is a guy named Pigsy. He's just a serial killer wearing a pig's head.
I hate that.
With like a chainsaw, right?
It's basically the same thing.
Well, you know what? It gets even worse because my guest didn't notice it at either. When they played it originally, I noticed it when I was playing it and watching playthroughs of it. Fucking the dude's Pigsy's naked and he's got a big old swanger just flopping around. So you see this guy with his dick flopping around with a pig mask and a chainsaw. It is mortifying.
But like, why? Ugh. Oof.
Yeah. Sorry,
So
when you mentioned that was the first thing.
Basically the same thing, except this guy's wang is
Not wanging.
perfectly covered.
His wang is not swanging.
It's not swanging. They saved me from that. But
before we get to the story, what are some of your favorite Easter eggs, though?
I loved, like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get my games mixed up because I just played them all back to back to back. Like, I literally have spent all my time lately playing Batman. But I really like that, like, any papers on the walls and stuff like that, like, there's just nods to other inmates that you don't necessarily see in this game, but, like, you know, as a villain. Like, I think there's, like, a penguin nod somewhere. But I really liked all of that, and I'm bummed I didn't notice the Clooney one.
I mean, that's such a hyper-specific thing, though.
So cool.
Like, that's something you have to be paying attention to a ticker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, no one would ever look at it, especially, like, this era of 3D gaming is when HD kind of started becoming more mainstream. Like, 2006 is when it technically did, but people were still game devs were still finding their footing with it. So I noticed on the PS3, now granted, it may have been because of the PS3 version, and sometimes games back then weren't always optimized for PS3 like they were for Xbox 360. So some of the textures would load funky. So it was kind of hard to tell. I would say modern versions of it, like if there's like an HD remaster, you'd probably be able to see it a lot easier. But in the original version, you shouldn't beat yourself up for it because it's probably hard to see.
That's cool though.
So we're gonna move on to the story to wrap up our discussion on Arkham Asylum. The big crux of the plot, like I said, Joker's taken over the asylum. That's the setup.
Yeah.
What he's actually trying to do is he has discovered this serum that he was working with a doctor in Arkham, and he was kind of blackmailing her, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And
I think she's kind of like going along with it first, and then she realizes what's happening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She was like misled and thought she was doing research for something else.
Exactly.
Or something. And then then she starts getting blackmailed and which at that point, just take one for the team and dip out. Dude.
Exactly, right?
Like, you know what the Joker's capable of.
Well, and what he's actually having her do is he's looking into Bane's serum, the serum that keeps Bane alive, but also turned into that giant Hulk that he needs serum in order to survive. He's trying to find a more stable version of it so that way he can inject it into somebody and turn them into a Titan, same thing as Bane. And so once you discover that's why the Joker has taken all over this, because prior to him taking over the asylum, the lady cut him off. That doctor, I forget her name. I feel bad because she's a pretty important character of the story. She cuts him off. She stops it. And so he has no other choice but to take over the asylum, if I'm remembering correctly. And so that's what the big crux of the plot is. And you find out that there is an antidote that, of course, conveniently, the plant for the antidote is on that island.
Whoa.
Who would have guessed?
That is so nice.
Whom amongst us could have guessed?
Whom amongst us?
Whom amongst us? And Batman has to question Poison Ivy because she can sense the plants and everything.
Yeah.
And she knows where it is. And of course, it's in Killer Croc's lair, which is why you go to Killer Croc. And then you have to go back to fight Ivy because Joker has let her out. And it's a really iconic line where, Joker talks about how the inmates run the asylum now. And like Hamill's delivery is so fucking good. So fucking good when he says it. And that's for the most part of the story. You stop Ivy because Joker has let everyone out. Inmates are running the asylum. You stop Killer. You get the antidote. You go stop Ivy because she's gonna, after she takes out you, she says she's gonna take out Joker, so you have to stop her first.
Yeah.
And then you go have the final fight with Joker. And when Joker injects himself with the Titan venom, that's when his ribcage shows and everything. And
not worth it.
He also injects Batman. And you were talking about this kind of dichotomy between the two. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that? Like, because Batman also gets injected with the Titan venom, and you can see the dichotomy or the
and that carries over into the other games, which is cool.
The juxtaposition between the two, or the Titan thing.
The Titan thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like, City is he's like feeling effects and everything, and then Arkham Knight starts off, spoiler alert, Joker's dead.
What?
And so you're like sitting there and like this game comes out and you're like, well, this whole series has been built on Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to continue this? And then they bring him back in such a genius way because he still has the Titan serum in him.
Yeah.
So he starts slowly going crazy, but he's fighting it the whole time.
I
but
forgot about that. That's
he's hallucinating the Joker the whole time.
Because that's his Titan. That's the personification of Titan in his mind.
And so, like, I mean, Asylum set all of that up, which is really cool.
That is really cool.
So they must have had it planned. I would think that they'd have storyline wise.
I would assume to an extent because Arkham Asylum and City came out 2 years apart from each other. 2 years is a super fast turnaround time, especially in that era.
They were probably still working on City while.
I mean, they could reuse a lot of assets at least, but it's still
but you still need
the story
your script,
would
your story. You still need to build the city because at this point we haven't been in Gotham. But yeah, it's a pretty cool way to continue that. So it's not just he's injected, Joker's injected, everybody's fine.
Mm-hmm.
They're clearly still feeling effects. And Joker's super sick. I think in City.
I think so too. It's been a minute.
They're blurring. They're all blurring in my mind.
The nice part is we're only focusing on Asylum today. So when I have you back on for City, you can have another excuse to replay it, and we'll talk about just City.
Such a bummer.
Sorry. The reason listeners can't see this because it's an audio medium, but I was looking at the screen because I wanted to make sure I have a whole bunch of fun facts, and I want to make sure I'm hitting them all. The story for this game was loosely inspired by the graphic novel Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
And there's not a ton of similarity. There's similarities. I think what I was looking up is that there's more dissimilarities than there were actual similarities. But one of the things that was similar was that the story of Amadeus Arkham was present in both. And you find out that as you're exploring through the game world, one of the Easter eggs is kind of hearing about the story of Amadeus Arkham, who set up Arkham Asylum. And you find out someone is possessed by the spirit of Amadeus Arkham, and it's Warden Sharp. And it's actually kind of fucking creepy when you find out it's him, because you go back to his office or where he was captured before, and you just see all the spirit of Arkham stuff, and it has Batman written in the center of it. It was really weird.
Yeah.
I don't because when you hear the story of Amadeus Arkham, it's pretty messed up. He talks about all the shit he did to the inmates and stuff. It's pretty
I feel
gruesome.
like that's the history of any asylum. They're just such a dark
oh yeah,
fucked up thing.
Oh my god, know what? There's a really cool podcast called you can still listen to it, but they're not doing new episodes, called American Shadows. Ooh. And it's all about darker sides of American history.
There's almost nothing I love more than spooky podcasts.
So what the crazy thing about this is that it's not necessarily going for a horror angle, but it's going for darker sides of America. So some of it is spooky, but some of it is just kind of shitty things that people did that don't get talked about. And
just make you feel sad about everything.
Well, one of them was about asylums and how back in the early 1900s, women had so few rights that they could just be accused of insanity, and there was literally they just get thrown in and given meds and shit, and then it would make them go insane because they're given meds that they didn't need.
Well, and what's more maddening than sitting there screaming that you're fine and you don't need to be there and stuff, and then I don't know, not being heard and
unfortunately that's a little bit too on the nose with our current political landscape.
Yeah, right.
Never mind. So they talk about,
they used to perform hysterectomies, fun fact, because women were hysterical.
Is that where the term comes from?
Yes, it is.
God damn it.
I forget what it exactly means in
nuts.
Greek, but it's anyway.
Go check out American Shadows. It's a really good show. Genuinely, one of the first. This is a little side tangent, but one of the episodes that really stuck out to me was, it was the first episode, and it was talking about, I forget the name of the element, but it was when Marie Curie discovered like radioactivity and stuff like that, they used a lot of that stuff. It would make stuff glow. Radium, that's the element. And so there was entire industry around radium because radium could glow. They would put it on ships because you could see it at night. Well, there's these women in the factory like painting radium on. Yeah. And they like, the bristles of the brush would start to like be a little bit finicky. So they would actually lick the brushes like, and yeah. So all these women were getting radiation poisoning, literally like, I'm not going to go into it's pretty gruesome, so I won't go into detail here just because I don't want to put a content warning on it. But it's pretty gnarly.
Radiation poisoning is disgusting,
and the stuff that happened to their bodies is horrible.
So messed up. That's the stuff of nightmares.
But that's not the main story of the episode. The main story is how those women tried to fight back legally.
Are these like the Radium Girls? Or something?
Yeah, yeah. That's what it was. I had never heard of that before, and how it lucked out that some of them that survived long enough, but the company was just essentially like they knew they were going to die, and they're like, well, if we just keep like putzing around in the legal system, we're not going to have to pay because they'll die out before the lawsuit can come to fruition.
Apparently that happens a lot. Yeah, like with companies, they just like keep pushing things because they know
that the person's gonna. Yeah. It's not to get too real on the show, folks, but it's. American Shadows, not all of it is nearly that like sad.
I'll have to check that episode out though.
That's like the first.
So interesting, but
it's like the first episode as well, so like you won't have to search far. There's a lot of other stuff on it, but definitely go. I highly recommend the podcast. It's one of my favorites.
But anyway, Amadeus
Arkham, hysterectomies.
Amadeus Arkham. Let me tell you the story. That's how he talked like the whole time, and it was always like very long. But you could close it out and keep playing the game, and it would just talk over your gameplay, which was nice.
all the audio logs you could do that too. One other fun fact that I don't have any other place to put was when you go to the kind of like the big asylum where did I put it? It is in the penitentiary, like when you walk into the penitentiary and all the inmates start screaming at you, that was the dev team. They just all cool. They were just recorded the dev team screaming, and that's all them.
That's cool.
I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, so the to get back to the story, you have to fight Joker to stop him from releasing the Titan venom, so he could essentially create an army of Titans and just do shit and just cause mass chaos in Gotham. And so you have to stop him. And Batman, which I didn't know that storyline. I didn't even think about how that storyline progressed through the series.
Like
that's
at
really
one
cool.
point he has like his blood shipped out to blood banks, and like Batman stops the majority of it, but they like miss like, I want to say like 3 or 4 people end up getting like a transfusion or something. Yeah,
and they turn into Titans.
So he's like studying them as they slowly go mad, and they're like locked up in cages.
It's wild. So yeah, he ends up injecting himself with the cure, and I love Joker's lines like, "You injected yourself?" Like, now that's funny. Like, it's such a good line from him. Oh my god! And then you fight the Joker and you win, and you stop the Titan stuff. Yeah. And that you there is a mission where you have to stop the Titan production, which was kind of fun. And that's the story of the game. I don't know.
It's fun. Yeah. It's a fun game.
It's a good comic book story.
What? It's 15 years old?
Yeah, right? 15 years old.
So it holds up. Like, I did not play it this time around thinking like, oh, graphically, I wish this was better.
No, it looks pretty good.
When I compare it to Arkham Knight, I can tell a difference. Like, like I did Asylum, City, Knight, and now I just started Origins. Part of it is streaming, but part of it is just trying to go from Knight to Origins. Yeah. Because Arkham Knight is such a beautiful game. But they're all really beautiful. They're all really good. Like, they hold up. Like, if they released it today, I'd still buy it.
It's honestly like, yeah, I think graphically, if they released it today, it wouldn't hold up. But like in terms of gameplay, and in terms of one of those things where when you think about a game that's 15 years old, like, know what's wild? If you think about it, 15 years prior to 2009, right? That was 1994. They're looking at games like Donkey Kong Country. And Super Metroid and Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis games, and you add 15 years to that, and you get Arkham Asylum. That's crazy. Wild. And then 15 years.
Like, if you had told like 1994 us that like the Super Nintendo Batman is not what we would be playing, but we'd be playing this like game where you can be Batman.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy because the NES game was like so infuriating.
Very difficult.
Oh my gosh.
Extremely difficult.
Just pure rage. Like, I've never beaten that game. I out of the two, like, I still don't think I could beat that game.
I have it somewhere in my collection. I don't think I could beat it. It's a tough ass game. But that does lead us into kind of final thoughts about Arkham Asylum in general. You're already kind of like talking about it a little bit. Like, I think a good way to wrap it up is, in what ways does this hold up still? Like, visually, I think you can tell it's older, but it doesn't look bad visually. You know,
no, it doesn't look bad.
The art direction is so solid, it still holds up.
And anything that like it lacks visually, I feel like it more than makes up for story-wise and like voice acting-wise. Like Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill will forever be like the iconic Batman and Joker for me.
Absolutely.
And I think for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Like, Kevin Conroy just did that so well, and he was so good at like having that like quiet rage, but like he was always like good at that like calm in the chaos, which I think is one of the things I really love about Batman is like he's always anticipating things. So like he has a backup plan for his backup plan. So he never panics. Like he just keeps going. He's very stoic.
Yeah.
And like I think that's what drove me nuts in like pretty much every version of live action Batman is like, I'm like, Batman wouldn't panic like that. Like
I never thought of it.
Like
so,
if you watch his face like in the animated stuff and stuff like that, like
it's very
or the games, like he's always like stoic, he's calm, like even when shit's going south, he's got a backup plan, so he's just moving on to the next plan. And that is such a cool fucking thing.
That is a really good observation. So like, once again, I feel comparing it to James Bond, but like not in the sense of like their personalities are the same.
But like just that suave, cool, like.
Well, it's not even that.
Confidence.
James Bond in the 60s and 70s was very much like it was comfort food for people who were afraid of the Cold War. Batman is comfort food for people going through like.
Go ahead, diagnose
calm,
me.
No, that's not for you. The calm and the chaos, though.
Yeah.
Like whenever, like that's when you hear about it in like sports metaphors and like all this other stuff. Like who the leader is always someone who's able to remain calm and collected, even though maybe emotionally they have a lot of things going on under the surface, and they have ways to talk about it later. But they know how to keep people calm in the midst of chaos.
It's just such an interesting
I never
take
thought about
because
that.
He spends so much time like as a character like producing fear.
Yeah.
And yet he is like such a symbol of hope too. Like it's just really cool. I don't know. I don't know of any other character that has found that balance. And I think that's one of the reasons I like Batman so much.
He's able to strike that juxtaposition between the two really well.
And it's just, he's just so fucking cool.
I think that's a good way to end it. He's just so fucking cool. This is a fucking cool game.
It is a fucking cool game.
Yeah, I don't have much else to say on it. Any final words, Heather? Just final thoughts to impart to my listeners here. Like, why should people go play this game? That's how I'll end it, and we'll do our plugs and everything.
Honestly, like, I don't know that there will ever be anybody. I mean, there are other voice actors I like. Don't get me wrong. I think Jensen Ackles did The Long Halloween, and I actually really like that. I mean, I like Jensen Ackles.
You're a Supernatural fan as well.
I am a Supernatural fan. Dean is another one though that he's very like calm in the chaos. So that's what I like. I guess
I could see. You know what?
He's not quite as cool as Batman, but he's still pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know that anybody is ever going to be able to top like Kevin Conroy. And it's just, there's something so comforting. Maybe it's because it's so nostalgic for me. Like that was my childhood and everything. But there's something comforting about his voice and like the way he does it. And I like that we'll always kind of like have that time capsule of him. And like that's what he got to leave behind. Like what a cool legacy, you know? So just for Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, it's worth playing through.
I would agree. And listeners,
and they played very well off each other.
They do. And I don't have nostalgia for the animated show, and I'm with you on you. I think he's got a very calming voice. He has a very good like,
and like if you heard him talk normally, like he doesn't sound like Batman.
No.
So I met him at a convention totally by mistake. And I am not somebody, like, I was pretty, like, shaken up, and I was like, I'm not somebody that, like, typically gets nervous when meeting somebody like that.
Yeah.
But, like, and, like, Kevin Conroy, like, unless you know who he is, like, unless you're a Batman fan, like, you're not walking down the street going, oh, shit, that's Kevin Conroy. Because, like, especially with voice actors, you know, like, they're not necessarily as recognizable. But I had met another artist at the convention that he does the coloring for Harley Quinn, or he did at the time. I don't know how many years ago it was, probably like 8 or 9 at this point. But I like casually mentioned about like, you know, like I think the only other people I would like to eventually meet at a con is Kevin Conroy and Michael Keaton.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, those would be my 2 people that I would like to meet. And he goes, well, Kevin Conroy's here. And I'm like, no, he's not. I checked he's like, no, well, he was in town and somebody that worked here knew him and called him, and he's here. He's not on the list, but he's here.
What?
And I was like, oh shit, are you serious? That's so cool. And I was like, we gotta go to Kevin Conroy's table. And he goes, well, I know him, I'll take you over. And so like he took me over and I got to meet him, and like I felt bad because I didn't pay for anything because he's like charging for autographs and pictures and stuff. And I was just so wrapped up in like I had been introduced to him and everything. And I was like, totally, it's the only time I've ever completely lost my chill. Like I was just like, you're my Batman. Like I just want you were like my entire childhood. Like and he was just the nicest guy, and he gave me like a really big hug, and like all I wanted to say to him was thank you, and I did. But like it's so stupid, but like Batman's like that character for me that like I don't know. It's just
it's not stupid.
It's a constant. Yeah. And like fictionally, like he is always my number 1 favorite fictional character. Like there have been times when I have not been as involved with Batman.
Well, that's the same with everything.
Like, you know, stuff gets pushed to the side.
Yeah, life gets in the way.
Hyperfixate on different shit, whatever. I always come back to Batman though. Like, and once I go down a Batman hole, I'm there for a while. So that's where I'm at right now. But Kevin Conroy was just so cool. And I just remember like totally freaking out. And he gave me a hug, and I thought he was the nicest guy. And like, I'm like walking away. I was like, thank you so much. And he's like, do you want a picture? And I was like, yeah, can we do a picture? And so I did that. And he signed a Batman animated photo for me. And it's like, to Heather, I'm Batman, Kevin Conroy, whatever.
That's
but like
awesome.
He didn't charge me for any of it. And I didn't even notice till after I left the con. I was like, I should have paid him. But like,
hey, if he was the thing so is cool. He offered. You didn't ask for a picture. He offered all of that.
No,
willingly.
he was like he was such a nice guy, and like I'm sure he got that a lot, but like I was very sad to hear that he had passed. Like I
mean, there's certain especially in the world we live in now, where this is going to sound like this. I feel like I started that like we're going to go into some serious like political thing, but like
we're wrapping up now, and then I told a 20-minute story.
No, it was a great story. I was you saw me. I was smiling ear to ear hearing that whole thing. That was wonderful.
He was great.
We grew up in like, especially you and I, we're millennials. We grew up in an era where like media saturated everything. So we, especially I feel like more geeky millennials like ourselves, we really get these deep emotional ties to the media that we're stuck into, because I don't know, maybe because we were not necessarily outcasts. Like we had friends growing up. Like we've known each other since high school, but like, I don't know. I feel like for something was in the water in our generation where people like the people are a little bit on the geekier side or have deep emotional connections to the media that meant something to them, whether it's because it was an escape from our own emotions or escape from the world around us. And like you were saying, like Batman's like a calm in the chaos, and if you're a whirlwind of emotions on the inside, that might have spoken to you. I'm not diagnosing you, to be clear. I don't know you well enough. I mean, I know you well enough, but I'm not. We can
diagnose. That's a different podcast, but let's dive in, guys.
Yeah, right.
All right, and on part 2,
still diagnosing
how Bruce Wayne diagnosed my mental illness.
I'm Batman. I knew it. He's a genius.
It just felt like too like. You know, if somebody could go through all the shit he went through and be okay, I mean, there's nothing okay about dressing as a bat and fighting crime. But in theory, he's okay, quote.
Seeing your parent, there's worse things to do than seeing your parent. Like, there's worse reactions to seeing your parents murdered in front of you. I'll just say that.
Well, and like, as a kid, like, that is the most terrifying thing. Like when you're that young, like, I would have nightmares like as a kid, and the worst ones always revolved around somehow losing a parent.
Yeah.
So like that's like the most severe thing you can think of when you're like 8-9 years old. You know what I mean? Like that's your whole world, and then it's just ripped away from you. No. So they like prey on that too, like as a kid. So, and Adam West Batman never did that. So I think like our generation, it like took that dark side and was like, you know what? Let's really pound this in, make him feel bad, and like.
There's a lot to unpack there. But no, I just think in general with that media, like for me, it wasn't Batman, but like I get emotional thinking about like just video games was that medium for me. And it's more video games in general than a specific title, but there are like a handful of.
Yeah, you like latch on to your characters.
Mighty Ducks was a big movie franchise for me.
Jamie like, never saw it.
He probably wouldn't like it now. I think the boat's been missed on that.
No, it's a solid 10 out of 10 movie.
Sure.
Everybody should go watch Mighty Ducks right now. Drop like what you're doing.
Just like Three Ninjas. That was another one of my favorites. A solid 10 out of 10. But no, I can understand why you feel that. Batman's a cool character. Like, no offense.
He is really cool.
He's a cool character. And
he is arguably the coolest character ever written.
I was telling you off mic how, even though I would get into other, I watch the Marvel movies. Yeah. I go see, I would read some of the comics. Batman's like cast of characters and villains. There's a what's the term for it? I always forget. There's like a term for like a superhero with their like group of villains. Like Spider-Man has his bunch of. I can't remember. There was a specific term I always hear people use for it.
I can't help you.
It's like circus of villains. I don't remember what it was. Anyway, but Batman's like group of villains, cavalcade of villains, I always thought were like super interesting and fun.
Yeah.
And the only other person, like a lot, I would hear like other comic book people talk about it, like say Spider-Man was the only one on the Marvel side that could rival his like array of villains. But like Batman just interested me. He was darker, he was interesting, but I like Batman. I do. Well, I'm not as big of a fan of him as you are, but I like Batman.
I think Stan Lee said like Batman was the only character he ever regretted not creating. Like,
there you go.
And then like I always think it's really interesting, like especially Fat Man on Batman. Yeah. Anytime they have like a comic book artist on, like those guys always grew up Marvel and stuff. And then like DC would approach them, and every single time, like if they were hesitant about signing because they were holding out for Marvel or something, they'd go, "You can only do Batman one place," and that always like sealed the deal for them. And like that's such a power move, because I mean, like I think he's just such a strong character, and like I mean, like he has a tragic backstory, and that's like generic at this point, but like.
Well, I think what makes him interesting is that you don't understand his motivations entirely. Like, you understand him to a point. Like, yeah, his parents were murdered in front of him, so then he felt the need to become a bat. You know, like it sounds ridiculous,
he's
but you
just
can
so deep.
But you can understand it. But it's the Joker. I think Batman wouldn't be as interesting of a hero if he didn't have the Joker to be his foil as a villain.
Yeah,
not saying he wouldn't be a cool hero otherwise, but I think the Joker really plays into like why are you doing this type of thing, and really like it gives
like a normal person would go to therapy and move on.
The Joker's his therapist in a weird fucked up way.
He just doubles down, man.
Oh my God. All right. We got to wrap this up though. Otherwise we're going to dissect it. No, you don't. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for joining me, Heather. This was a lot of fun talking about Arkham Asylum and everything therein and more. This was like not just talking about Batman, but like a lot of the stuff on like with City and Night I found super interesting too. The through line of the story. This was a great conversation. So thank you for joining me. Is there anything, I know we were talking a bit off mic, I want to still throw it over to you. Is there any social media or anything you want to plug that you want people to go check out, whether it's your social media or if there's any projects you want to plug or anything like that?
I have no plugs right now.
No plugs? Okay.
I mean, my Instagram's Mashums, Mashums. But unless you like Batman, Taylor Swift, dogs, and like my kid, You're not going to get much. So,
all right. Well, that if you want to go follow her, you can check her out there. As usual, for myself, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Still Loading Pod. Also, Blue Sky, Threads, and Twitch at Still Loading Pod. Over on YouTube at Still Loading Podcast. If you want to support the show, you can give it a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcasting app you use. It helps more people find the show. It kind of spreads the word about it. Tell all your friends. That's another good way. Word of mouth,
guys.
Word of mouth is a great way to do it. And that's free. It costs you nothing except just talking to your friends or putting a 5-star rating or review on whichever podcasting app you use. There's also, if you want to support the show monetarily, there's a Patreon, patreon.com/stillloadingpod. For $1 a month, you get all the episodes a little bit earlier with better audio quality, as well as access to patron voting rights. It helps you choose future topics of the show. For $3 a month, you get everything I mentioned prior, plus patron shoutouts, which you heard at the beginning of this episode. So thank you to all those patrons. For $4 a month, you get everything prior, plus access to 2 mini bonus episodes. And for $5 a month, actually, it will still be going on when this comes out. So I think I'm 99% certain it'll still be going on. Still Bonding, my monthly James Bond podcast where me and a bunch of friends bond over 007. That is for $5 a month. And at this point, there's over 20 some odd episodes. Each of them are 2.5 to 4.5 hours, depending on the length of the movie. So yeah, all that stuff is over at patreon.com/stillloadingpod. But that's it. That's all the time I got for you today.
If you want to support me financially, my Venmo is also at Mashums.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. No, you can take that out. Keep it in.
Do you want me to take it out or keep it in?
Keep it in.
Okay, keep it in.
I want my $1.
I want your $1. All right. Well, at Mashums over on Venmo. There you go. But no, that's all the time I got for you today. Thank you all so much for listening. Heather, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And with all that said, listeners, I will see you all next time.
Spot on.
Where's the trigger?
I'm Batman.
Just gets less
Dude, how
intelligible.
bad did his throat hurt by the end of it?
God, he probably couldn't even speak. Where's the trigger? Did you just say a different word? No.
My best friend and I did a day of talk in Batman's voice, and we lasted probably an hour and a half.
Before you needed like honey and throat lozenges.
Yeah.
I don't
We're like,
blame
let's go to Aerie and get some underwear. Like, that's literally what I want to go to Chick-fil-A. Like, it was not good.
Could you dye my roots? The hair salon.
I need some shoes.
Funny
Cut
story.
all that out.
I might use bits of it as like bloopers at the end.